I never thought the people I loved most would leave me freezing outside my own door. I stood in the dark, holding my phone, my hands shaking, not just from the cold but from the sting of their words. My sister laughed when I begged for help. My dad told me to stop being dramatic. They had no idea what was really inside my apartment, but the whole city was about to find out. The next morning, the sight on live TV made them drop their phones in shock. My name is Harper Lane, and this is the night everything between me and my family changed forever. I had just come back from a business trip that was supposed to be 2 days, but stretched into 5 because of flight delays. My suitcase felt like a bag of bricks as I dragged it up the steps of my building. It was past midnight, the air was sharp with winter cold, and I could see my breath in the dim light from the street lamp. I reached for my keys inside my bag and felt my stomach drop. They weren't there. I checked every pocket, every zipper, even poured my bag out onto the step, but nothing. Then I remembered. The spare key was with my sister because she had borrowed it when I was away. Relief came for a second until I called her. The phone rang a few times before she picked up, and her voice was filled with the noise of laughter and clinking glasses. "Harper, you know what time it is," she said, half laughing. "Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm locked out. Can you bring me the spare key?" I tried to keep my voice calm, but the cold was already cutting through my coat. She laughed. "Harper, I'm at dinner with friends. You'll survive. Don't be so dramatic." My chest tightened. "Please, it's freezing and I've just come from the airport. I don't have anywhere else to go." She sighed loudly as if I was ruining her night. "Call Dad, he's closer." The line went dead. I swallowed hard and dialed my father. He answered after a few rings, his tone annoyed. "What's wrong now?" I explained quickly, hoping for some understanding. He cut me off with, "Harper, you're an adult. Figure it out. Stop being dramatic over small things." My hands trembled, not just from the cold, but from the disappointment. I wanted to scream, to remind them of all the times I'd rushed to help them. The time I drove 4 hours to pick up my sister when her car broke down. The time I covered my dad's hospital bill when his insurance refused. And here they were, acting like my need was nothing. I sent a final message to the family group chat, locked out. "Can someone please help?" My brother replied 2 minutes later, "Too tired. Try a hotel." My mom chimed in, "Why didn't you plan better?" It was like a slap in the face. I stared at the screen, my eyes burning, and typed back, "No worries." I didn't want to beg anymore. I was done. If you're watching this right now, please take a second to like this video and subscribe. It helps me more than you think. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I really want to see how far my story has reached. By that point, the cold had seeped through to my bones. My phone battery was slipping under 10%. I tried to think of anyone else I could call, but my closest friends either lived across town or were asleep. Then I thought about the police, not because I wanted to cause trouble, but because I didn't feel safe anymore. It wasn't just the cold. There had been strange noises in my apartment before I left, footsteps when I was sure I was alone, things going missing and then reappearing in odd places. I brushed it off back then, but now, standing in the dark, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe someone was inside. My heart began to race. What if my keys weren't lost? What if someone took them? I hesitated, my finger hovering over the emergency number. I didn't want to seem paranoid. But then a flicker of movement in the window above caught my eye, a shadow, quick and sudden. My breath hitched. I was certain no one was supposed to be in my apartment. That decided it. I called the police. The dispatcher was calm but quick, asking me to stay on the line and wait for officers. The street felt even quieter after I hung up. Every sound, passing cars, a distant dog barking, made me jump. When the police finally arrived, 2 officers stepped out of the car, their flashlights cutting through the dark. I explained everything, the missing keys, the shadow, the fact I'd been away for days. They exchanged a glance, and one of them radioed something I couldn't quite hear. "We need to check the apartment," one officer said. "If someone's inside, it could be dangerous." My stomach twisted. "You have to break the door," I said quietly. He nodded, and within moments they were speaking into a camera mounted on their jackets. I realized this wasn't just a check. They were calling in backup, and the whole thing was being streamed to local news as part of a live night patrol segment. That's when I felt the weight of it. My family would see this. Everyone would. But none of them knew what was about to come out of that apartment. The officer's radio crackled, another voice confirming they were watching from the newsroom. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded, even though my knees felt like they might give out. The battering ram hit the door once, twice, until it gave way with a deafening crack. Flashlights swept through the dark apartment. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear their footsteps. Then one of the officers froze. "Ma'am, you need to see this." I stepped forward, my breath caught in my throat, and what I saw made my whole body go cold in a way the winter air never could. It wasn't just a break-in. It was something much worse. The officer's voice sounded distant, like I was underwater. "Ma'am, you need to see this." My feet felt heavy as I stepped past the broken door, my suitcase still sitting on the steps behind me. The apartment smelled strange, like dust mixed with something sharp, metallic. The beam of the flashlight caught the edge of my coffee table, but it wasn't where I'd left it. The couch was pushed slightly, as if someone had been hiding behind it. My kitchen drawers were half open. The officer led me toward the hallway. "Stay close," he said, his hand hovering near his gun. My bedroom door was ajar, though I remembered locking it before leaving for my trip. I pushed it open with the tips of my fingers. My heart sank. The room was in chaos, clothes scattered across the floor, my jewelry box emptied, drawers pulled out and overturned. But what froze me in place was the wall above my bed. There, written in thick black marker, were the words, "I know what you did." My throat tightened. My first thought was, who? And then a colder thought followed. How long had they been here? The officer stepped closer, inspecting the writing. "When was the last time you were home?" 5 days ago, I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I've been overseas." "Did anyone have access to your apartment while you were gone?" My mind flashed to my family. They had keys. My sister had the spare. But why would they? No, this had to be someone else. He called his partner in, and soon 2 more officers entered, their radios alive with chatter. I heard one of them say, "We're going live with this possible stalker situation." My stomach dropped. Live. That meant this was being shown in real time. Somewhere out there, my father, my sister, my brother, they could be watching. I suddenly felt exposed, not just to them, but to the entire city. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from my sister. "What's going on? Are those police cars outside you?" I didn't reply. She hadn't cared 30 minutes ago. Why should she now? The officers moved into my closet, shining lights across the shelves. That's when one of them called out, "We've got something." He emerged holding a small black duffel bag. I didn't recognize it. He unzipped it slowly. Inside were envelopes, thick ones, filled with cash and a stack of photographs. My photographs, they were all of me, walking to work, grocery shopping, sitting on my balcony reading, all taken from a distance. My blood turned to ice. "You've got a stalker," the officer said flatly. "Looks like they've been watching you for a while." I gripped the edge of my dresser to steady myself. This wasn't just a break-in. This was personal. And whoever it was, they had been close enough to touch my life without me knowing. The reporters outside were shouting now, their voices muffled through the broken door. Camera lights flashed in the hallway. The officer asked me to step outside for a statement, but my legs felt like stone. Somehow, I walked to the doorway, the cold night air slapping me in the face. A reporter shoved a microphone toward me. "Ms. Lane, do you know who might have done this?" I hesitated. I could have said no, I could have stayed silent, but something inside me snapped. "I think I know exactly who would want to scare me," I said, my voice steady despite my shaking hands. "But I don't think they expected it to end like this." The crowd murmured. Flashes went off. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my dad. "Harper, call me now." I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Let him wait. The police carried the duffel bag out like it was evidence from a crime scene, which it was. They told me they'd have to dust the place for prints and that I should stay somewhere else for the night. I nodded, though my mind was racing. I didn't have anywhere else to go. I started to walk away from the flashing lights, but a familiar voice stopped me. "Harper," I turned. It was Mason, my neighbor from down the hall. He looked worried. "I saw the news. Are you okay?" I almost said yes out of habit, but the truth slipped out instead. "No, not even close." He offered his place for the night, and though I hated feeling like a burden, I accepted. Once inside his apartment, the warmth made me realize how numb my fingers had been. He made me tea, and for a moment I almost forgot about the cameras and the flashing lights outside. "Do you think it's someone you know?" he asked quietly. I stared into the steam rising from the cup. "I think it's someone who knows me too well." I didn't tell him my suspicion, not yet, but deep down I was sure. There was only one person who had reason to watch me this closely, and they were in my family. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, missed calls, messages, all from the same people who had left me to freeze earlier. "My brother, we just saw the news. Are you okay? My mom, why didn't you tell us it was serious? My sister, we didn't know it was this bad. Please answer." I set the phone face down on the table. Let them feel the same silence they'd given me. Mason offered his couch, and though I was exhausted, my mind wouldn't rest. Every creak of the building made me jump. At some point, I drifted into a restless sleep. When I woke, the sun was just starting to rise. My phone had over 30 new messages, but one stood out. It wasn't from my family. It was from an unknown number. The message was just 3 words, "You can't hide." My skin prickled. Whoever had been in my apartment wasn't done. And now I had a feeling they were watching even closer. The moment I saw the message, asterisk, "You can't hide," asterisk, my chest tightened like a fist was squeezing my ribs. My fingers hovered over the screen, wanting to block the number, but my gut told me not to. If the police could trace it, maybe they could finally figure out who this was. But then another thought crept in. What if it was someone close enough to already know where I was? My eyes flicked toward Mason's door, suddenly aware that I was in someone else's apartment with no real way to lock myself in. I glanced at the time. 6:12 a.m., too early to call the lead detective without sounding paranoid, but far too late for me to pretend I could sleep again. Mason was still asleep in his bedroom, so I moved quietly to the window and peered out. The street looked calm, the news vans were gone, and the snow from last night had hardened into a thin, icy layer. For a second, I thought maybe the worst was over. Then I noticed it, a black sedan parked 2 buildings down. No frost on the windshield, which meant it had been running recently. I couldn't see who was inside, but I could feel it, the same heavy, pressing sensation I'd felt in my apartment before. Someone was watching. I stepped back quickly, my breath shallow. The phone buzzed again. "Did you tell them?" No name, no punctuation, just the same unknown number. My stomach knotted. Tell them what? I typed a reply before I could stop myself. "Who is this?" No answer. Instead, 3 dots appeared, typing, and then vanished. I waited, staring at the screen, but nothing came. Mason's voice startled me. "Harper, you're up early." I forced a small smile. "Couldn't sleep." I didn't tell him about the texts. Not yet. I didn't want to pull him into this mess. He offered to walk me back to my apartment later so I could grab some essentials, but the thought of stepping back inside that space made my skin crawl. Still, I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. The police would want me there for follow-up questions. Around 9 a.m., Detective Harris called. His voice was steady but urgent. "Ms. Lane, we processed the bag we found in your apartment. The prints match someone with a prior record." My heart jumped. "Who?" There was a pause, like he was choosing his words. "A man named Daniel Cross. Does that name mean anything to you?" I froze. Daniel Cross. The name alone sent a shiver through me. I hadn't heard it in years. He was my ex-fiancé. The one I left 3 weeks before the wedding when I discovered he was stealing money from my accounts. I'd told my family back then, but they didn't believe me. My father even called me paranoid and selfish for ending things. I took a deep breath. "Yes, I know him." Harris continued. "He's been in and out of trouble since then. Looks like he's been keeping tabs on you for a while." My mind was spinning. Daniel had been inside my home, he'd been taking photos of me, and now he was threatening me. I felt sick. "Do you have any idea where he is now?" "We're looking, but Ms. Lane," his voice lowered. "Be careful, he's unpredictable." I thanked him and hung up, my hands shaking. Mason noticed my pale face. "Bad news." I told him everything. His jaw tightened. "You can't go anywhere alone, not until they catch him." That sounded logical, but deep down, I knew something else. Daniel wouldn't have done all this without a reason. And that writing on my wall, asterisk, "I know what you did," asterisk, that wasn't about our breakup. That was something deeper, something I didn't even understand yet. Mason walked me to my apartment around noon. The door was now boarded with police tape across it. Inside, the smell was stronger, like stale cologne mixed with dust. I grabbed a bag and stuffed it with clothes, my laptop, and the few personal things I couldn't bear to leave. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen last night, a small folded note under my pillow. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, written in neat block letters, were the words, "Your family knows." My vision blurred for a second. Knows what? I stumbled back, my mind racing through every possible meaning. Did they know Daniel? Had they been in contact with him? Or was this some twisted game he was playing to make me doubt everyone? Mason took the note from my hand, reading it with a frown. "Harper, what if this isn't just about you?" The thought chilled me to my core. Back at Mason's place, I finally answered one of my sister's messages, not with an explanation, but with a simple question. "Do you know Daniel Cross?" She replied almost instantly. "Why are you bringing him up?" My pulse quickened. "Because the police found his stuff in my apartment." Another pause, then, asterisk, "Don't talk to Mom or Dad about this yet." That was all she said. I stared at the screen, my stomach flipping. Why not? What were they hiding? I decided to push. "Do you know where he is?" No answer. Just the 3 dots again, then nothing. My phone buzzed a second later. It was the unknown number again. Stop asking them. My hands went cold. Whoever was texting me knew exactly what I was doing, almost in real time. That meant they were closer than I thought. I looked toward Mason's window, scanning the street. The black sedan was gone now. But that didn't mean I was safe. If anything, it meant they were moving. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside made me flinch. At 3 a.m., I woke to find my phone screen lit up. A new message from the same unknown number. This time, it was a photo. A photo of me, taken just hours ago, sitting on Mason's couch. My blood ran cold. They weren't just watching my apartment anymore. They were watching me right now. The photo on my phone screen made my heart pound so hard it hurt. It wasn't just the image. It was the knowledge that someone had been inside Mason's building without either of us noticing. They were close, closer than I had ever imagined, and bold enough to stand there, camera in hand, while I sat sipping tea, completely unaware. My hands shook as I showed Mason the photo. His face darkened, and he moved to the window immediately, pulling the curtain back just enough to scan the street. "They had to be outside," he muttered. "Or Harper, they could be in the building." That thought made my stomach twist. I grabbed my phone and called Detective Harris, my voice trembling as I explained what had happened. He told me to stay put and that he'd send a unit over to sweep the area. 20 minutes later, 2 uniformed officers knocked on Mason's door. They checked the hallway, the stairwell, and even the rooftop, but found nothing. One of them took my phone to photograph the image, promising their tech team would try to pull metadata from it. When they left, the silence in the apartment felt heavier than before. I sat on the couch, my knees pulled to my chest, trying to think through the panic. Daniel, the note, the texts, my family. All of it was tangled together, and I couldn't tell where one thread ended and the next began. Finally, I decided I couldn't keep tiptoeing around it. I was going to confront them. I started with my sister. She picked up on the second ring, her voice low and tight, like she didn't want anyone else to hear. "Harper, I told you not to." "Cut it," I snapped. "You knew Daniel, you knew he was in my apartment. What the hell is going on?" There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing, slow and shaky. "It's not what you think." My throat tightened. "Then tell me what it is." "Mom and Dad, they've been in touch with him," she said finally. "For months." I felt like the air had been punched out of me. "Why?" "He said you ruined his life. He told them he just wanted to talk to you to make things right. They believed him, Harper. They thought if they kept in contact, they could manage him." My hands curled into fists. "Manage him? He's a stalker. He broke into my home. He's threatening me." "I know," she whispered. "I didn't think it would go this far." I wanted to scream at her, but my voice came out low and cold instead. "You didn't think." "None of you did." She started to say something else, but I hung up. My chest was heaving, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the phone. Mason was watching me from across the room, his jaw tight. "They're protecting him." "Looks like it," I said, my voice flat. "And I'm done letting them." I called Detective Harris again, telling him everything my sister had admitted. He listened carefully, then said, "That changes things. If your family's been communicating with him, they might know where he is. I'll need you to stay somewhere safe tonight. We'll bring them in for questioning." I agreed, but my mind was already racing ahead. Safe wasn't enough. I needed control. I needed to make sure Daniel and my family understood that I wasn't the scared, freezing woman they'd left outside my door. Around midnight, as Mason slept, I sat on the couch scrolling through old photos and emails, pulling together every piece of proof I had about Daniel's past, his theft, his threats, his lies. I made copies, saved them to multiple drives, and drafted a message I wasn't sure I'd ever send. The next morning, the police called. They'd spoken to my parents and brother. All 3 admitted they'd been in contact with Daniel, but claimed they hadn't seen him in weeks. Detective Harris didn't sound convinced. "Your father said Daniel told him you were hiding something from us. Do you have any idea what he meant?" I told him no, but the truth was, my mind went straight to the note, * your family knows. Knows what? The only secret I'd ever kept from them was the truth about why I really left Daniel. They thought it was about the money, but there was more. Something I'd buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself it didn't matter, but now it was clawing its way back to the surface. After Harris hung up, I sat staring at the wall, my tea going cold in my hands. Mason broke the silence. "Harper, what exactly happened between you and him?" My mouth felt dry. "It wasn't just the money. There was someone else, someone he hurt, and I didn't stop him." Saying it out loud made my skin crawl. Mason didn't push for details, but I saw the questions in his eyes. I couldn't answer them. Not yet. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number message. This time it wasn't words, it was a video. I tapped it and my own building appeared on the screen. The camera moved up slowly, past the boarded door, past the windows, until it stopped on the very window of Mason's apartment. The curtains were drawn, but still the message was clear. I know where you are. My blood ran cold. There was no hiding now. I showed Mason, and we both knew we couldn't stay here. I packed my bag in under 5 minutes, every movement quick and sharp. Mason insisted on coming with me, and I didn't argue. We got into his car, but as soon as we turned the corner, my phone pinged again. Running won't help. I stared at the screen, my hands numb on my lap. Whoever this was, they weren't just close. They were watching every move I made. Mason reached over and squeezed my shoulder. We'll go to the station. Harris can figure this out. But as the city lights blurred past the window, one thought burned in my mind. If my family had opened the door to Daniel, then I would be the one to slam it shut. For good. I didn't sleep that night. My head was full of the sound of that officer's voice saying, "Ma'am, I'm sorry for your loss." The word *loss kept echoing, but not because I lost my apartment. I realized I had lost my family long ago. They just didn't care enough for me to notice it before. I sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket the police had given me, staring at the cracked front door they had broken open. My phone lit up with messages again, but I ignored them. I needed time to think. The police had taken pictures of everything, every broken lock, every smashed frame, every dark stain on the floor. I didn't want to look at it, but I had to. It was my home. My sister had sent a voice note that morning, her voice softer than usual, saying, "We didn't know it was serious. We thought you were just overreacting." Overreacting. That was her excuse. My father texted me too, saying, "We'll talk about this later." I didn't reply to either. Instead, I called the detective, asked if they found anything about how someone got inside. He told me they were looking into a possible forced entry but wouldn't say more. Something in his tone made me feel he was hiding something from me. Later that day, a news van parked outside. A reporter knocked on my door and asked if I wanted to give my side of the story. I didn't. Not yet. But when I saw the headline later, "Woman left outside as family refuses to help, break-in leads to grim discovery," I realized my story was already out there. People were commenting online, calling my family heartless, calling me brave, asking why I didn't just cut them off. Some even said they wished I'd expose them fully. That's when the idea came to me. I could tell the truth. Not just about that night, but about everything. How my family had treated me for years, how they laughed at my pain, how they ignored my calls for help. But I wasn't going to just post it online and be done. No, I wanted them to feel it, to see it, to have their faces shown alongside their words. I started collecting everything, screenshots of the group chat, recordings of the voicemails, even old texts from when my mom told me I was a burden after my husband died. The more I gathered, the more I realized this wasn't just about revenge. This was about finally making them understand that their coldness had consequences. That night, I got a call from the detective again. He told me they had reviewed security camera footage from the hallway of my building. My stomach dropped when he said, "The person who unlocked your door that night is someone you know." I asked who. He paused and said, "Your brother." My head spun. I couldn't believe it. He had a key to my apartment, sure, but why would he come in the middle of the night when I wasn't home? Why wouldn't he tell me? The detective told me they were investigating further, but that they also found something in my apartment, an envelope under my bed. It had my name on it. Inside were photographs of me sleeping, taken weeks earlier. My chest tightened. I remembered nights when I thought I heard footsteps, when I felt like someone had been inside while I was gone. I had told my family back then, and they laughed it off. Now I knew I wasn't crazy. The next day, I decided to visit my brother. I didn't tell the police I was going. When he opened the door, his eyes widened like he had seen a ghost. I asked him directly, "Why were you in my apartment that night?" He stammered, said something about checking if everything was okay after he heard I was locked out. But I knew he was lying. I could see it in his eyes. I didn't push further. Not yet. I walked away, but my plan was growing bigger. They wanted to act like my pain didn't matter. They wanted to pretend like I was just dramatic. Fine. I'd show them what dramatic really was. I started writing down everything that had happened, every betrayal, every cruel word, every time they turned their backs on me. I wasn't just going to tell my story. I was going to make it impossible for them to hide from it. And soon, everyone in our town, no, everyone in the country, was going to know exactly who they were. The days after the news broke were a storm I didn't expect. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from unknown numbers, reporters asking for interviews, neighbors pretending they cared when they never even looked at me before. But not one call from my sister or my dad. Not one. I knew they'd seen it. Everyone in the city had, but they chose silence. Silence was their answer, and it told me more than words ever could. I couldn't stop thinking about the look on their faces when they saw the police break down my door on live TV. I imagined them frozen, food halfway to their mouths, eyes wide, realizing they had laughed while I was trapped in a nightmare. And that thought didn't hurt. It fueled me. The truth was finally out, but it wasn't enough. I didn't just want them to see me hurt. I wanted them to understand what they had done. I wanted them to feel it deep in their bones. The problem was, they had always lived in their own world where I was the overreacting one, the dramatic one, the weak one. To break that, I had to make them face me. So I decided to invite them over. Not for dinner, not for a talk, but for something they couldn't refuse, a family meeting with my lawyer present. I sent a group text. "We need to talk, all of us. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. my place." My sister read it instantly. My dad left it on scene for hours before replying with just one word. "Fine." I didn't tell them the reason. That was part of the plan. The night before, I sat in my apartment surrounded by silence except for the faint hum of my heater. I thought about my husband. He would have told me I was doing the right thing. He would have said, "Make them look you in the eye." And I intended to. At exactly 4:59 the next day, I heard the knock. I opened the door to see them standing there, my sister with her arms crossed, my dad with his usual scowl. "This better be important," she muttered. I stepped aside and let them in without a word. The lawyer sat at the dining table, papers neatly stacked in front of him. My sister's eyes darted to the documents. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to sound annoyed, but there was a hint of unease in her voice. I sat down slowly, locking eyes with both of them. "We're here," I began, "because you left me outside in the freezing cold while my life was in danger. Because you laughed. Because you told me I was dramatic while my home was being invaded." My dad shifted uncomfortably. "We didn't know." "You didn't care to know," I cut him off. My voice was steady, calm, but every word carried the weight of every night I had cried alone. The lawyer slid a folder toward them. "My client," he said, "has decided to remove you both from her will, revoke all financial ties, and terminate your access to any shared family assets." My sister's mouth dropped open. "Are you serious?" she hissed. I leaned forward. "Dead serious." She slammed her hands on the table. "This is revenge." I tilted my head. "No, this is me protecting myself." My dad's face turned red, but he didn't speak. He just stared at the papers, maybe realizing for the first time that his control over me was gone. The lawyer continued, "Additionally, we have documented evidence of the neglect and emotional harm caused by your actions, should this ever need to be presented in court." My sister laughed, but it was a shaky laugh. "You're making a fool of yourself." I smiled faintly. "Maybe. But at least I'm no longer the fool who waits outside in the cold for people who will never come." The meeting ended without hugs, without apologies. They left in silence, the sound of the door closing feeling like the end of a long, toxic chapter. But deep down, I knew this wasn't truly the end. People like them don't take humiliation quietly. They'd try to get back at me. They'd try to twist the story, make me the villain again. And I was ready for that. Because now I had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. I stood by the window as they walked away, their figures small against the fading light. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt powerful. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about making sure they could never hurt me again. And I had one more move left to play, one that would make sure the whole world knew exactly who they were. I could hear the pounding in my head before I realized it was the pounding on my door. The morning air was still heavy with the chill from the night before, and the street outside was a mix of flashing lights, loud radios, and curious neighbors peeking from behind curtains. I didn't even have to open my phone to know my story had already made its way onto every local channel. Last night's events weren't just my problem anymore. They were the city's conversation. By the time the police had finished questioning me, the camera crews had already pieced together enough to make my family's betrayal public. They didn't just leave me stranded. They had ignored a call for help that could have saved the situation from becoming dangerous. My sister called around noon. I didn't pick up the first time. She called again, then again. Finally, I answered. Her voice was shaking, nothing like the mocking laugh from the night before. "I didn't know it was that bad," she whispered. "I swear if I had known," I cut her off. You didn't want to know, that's the difference. Silence. Then she tried to pull it back, to smooth it over, to make it seem like it was just bad timing. But the world had already seen the truth, and no amount of excuses could undo it. By afternoon, my dad was at my doorstep. He had no flowers, no food, no apology in his eyes, just that awkward shuffle of a man who knows he's been caught. "You should have told us," he muttered, staring at the floor. "Told you, Dad, I did tell you. You just didn't care enough to listen." He flinched like the words were sharp. The truth often is. My phone kept buzzing with messages from friends I hadn't heard from in years, each one saying some version of "saw you on the news. Can't believe they left you like that." It was strange, the way a personal betrayal could suddenly become a public story, open for strangers to judge. But in a way, I was glad. They had built their image in this neighborhood as a close, respectable family. That image was gone now. By evening, my story had gone viral. Someone had clipped the moment the police broke down my door and posted it online with the caption, "When family won't help you, but strangers will." Millions watched. The comments poured in, some sympathetic, others furious on my behalf, and a few that hit me harder than I expected. Cut them off. Family is who shows up, not who shares your DNA. I didn't respond to my family that day or the next. The silence was my answer. It wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. I didn't scream, I didn't post my own video, I didn't confront them in public. I just let the truth breathe. The world saw what happened, and they could deal with the weight of that. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Not a text, not an email, a handwritten letter from my mom. She said she was sorry, that she hadn't realized how much I needed her, that she would do better next time. I stared at those words for a long time. There's something about apologies that come only after public shame. They never feel quite real. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Life has a way of teaching lessons that words never could. I replaced the broken door, changed the locks, and slowly, quietly, built a life where my safety and peace didn't depend on people who could leave me outside in the cold. I wasn't angry anymore, not the way I had been that night, but I was done. They had shown me who they were. I believed them. And from then on, I chose myself first. Always. That's how it ended for me, not with a dramatic confrontation, but with a quiet decision that my life would no longer be open to those who had closed their hearts to me.